Alright, good evening folks, it's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to another Short War video, and today we have very big news coming out of China, the Middle East, Ukraine, and the United States. But by far our biggest piece of news of the day is coming out of Taiwan, as we have gotten word that China is allegedly ramping up its plans to invade Taiwan in mere months instead of taking years to pull it off, and that's because of the recent escalation between the United States and China in this trade war that's currently taking place. We've also gotten word as well that the price of oil is collapsing so fast inside of Russia that the Kremlin says they have an eye on the situation and they're monitoring it in case there's a financial collapse inside their country due to not being able to sell the oil at an appropriate price. We've also gotten word out of the Middle East that the Yemeni rebels are getting pounded by the US forces again today in a brand new round of airstrikes, and we do have footage showing those aircraft taking off, and also we do have a footage out of China showing their brand new stealth fighter landing at a Chinese airport that we can examine here on the video. But jumping into our first post of the day, this one goes to Indo-Pacific News. And this is by far our biggest story of the day. Right now we're hearing that allegedly China will launch an invasion of Taiwan in the next few months according to intel sources, as opposed to taking years to pull it off. And we've heard that the sources that spoke to the outlet in 1945 state that they believe an attempt by China to invade Taiwan is no less than 6 months away, and they went on to add in the article that Beijing's unrelenting program of harassment activities directed against the ROC has been described by Sir Alex Younger, the former chief of the UK Secret Intelligence Service, as a quote-unquote a textbook on subversion, cyber, and political harassment, or a case study for understanding the aspects of gray zone type warfare. So of course that is a bombshell revelation if true, and of course the recent trade war between the United States and China is not helping things, because I think Xi Jinping was going to use Taiwan as a bargaining chip when it comes to this trade war situation, but now that the tariffs have been applied to China already, there's really nothing left to negotiate, and China is already escalating the trade war even worse than the United States originally did it themselves. So it's getting really out of hand, and Taiwan could be the brunt of the punishment coming from China as a result of this trade war that's breaking out right now. And of course we had heard from officials that maybe the invasion was going to take place in 2026 or 2027, but now we're hearing it could take place this year in 2025, which is a pretty big shift. So we have seen the landing craft being built, and China has been testing those craft, and that is what they need to actually conduct the invasion, and apparently they're currently functional as we speak. So this could actually happen in months instead of taking years to pop off. But jumping into our next post here, this one goes to Alexandru C4. And speaking of the trade war situation, of course the US did apply tariffs to pretty much every country in the world as of yesterday, or a few days ago actually, and we now have heard a direct response from China that they've escalated this whole situation, and today we've heard that China's decided to restrict exports of 7 rare earth metals critical for high-tech industries, which is a direct response to US tariffs, and this was reported by Bloomberg. So of course that is not good right there. China has not backed down as the US administration believed they were going to do. China is actually going deeper into the situation, they're escalating it, and now they're actually withholding rare earth metals that are crucial for high-tech components in our electronics. So without those metals, we have to find an alternative source, which is going to cause a bit of a supply chain problem as a result of this type of deal. So this is not good to hear once again, and of course we've already heard a response from the United States. They're going to try to escalate it very quickly, like China just did. And going into our next post here, this one goes to BNO News Live. And like I mentioned, the United States is looking to double down on the situation now that China has retaliated to the original tariffs placed on them by the United States. And today we have gotten a statement from the US president on his social media platform, I believe it's called Truth Social, and we can see that statement right here. As we can see, the US president says that yesterday China issued retaliatory tariffs of 34% on top of their already record-setting tariffs, non-monetary tariffs, illegal subsidization of companies, and massive long-term currency manipulation, despite my warning that any country that retaliates against the United States by issuing additional tariffs above and beyond their already existing long-term tariff abuse of the nation, they will be immediately met with new and substantially higher tariffs over and above those initially set. And therefore, if China does not withdraw its 34% increase above their already long-term trading abuses by tomorrow, April the 8th, the United States will impose additional tariffs on China of 50%, effective on April the 9th, which is just 2 days away. And additionally, all talks with China concerning their requested meetings with the US will be terminated. There's no talking until they actually comply with that. And negotiations with other countries which have already requested meetings will begin taking place immediately. Then they said, thank you for this attention on the matter. And this is a very disturbing trend to see, because of course, between all the US tariffs on China, that adds up to about 104% on China, which is insane. That is very high. That's above 100%. So obviously that is a very high tariff right there. So if this retaliation actually does take place by the US president on China, I suspect, and I pretty strongly believe, that China is going to retaliate yet again, and this trade war is going to get out of hand until one side decides to give or one side decides to back down. So whatever the case is, someone's going to have to give here, because if they don't, this is going to be bad for everybody. So it looks like it's getting out of hand, and China's getting very irritated with the United States, and the US is also getting very irritated with China, which of course can spark tensions in Taiwan that's currently being talked about right now by various intel sources. But with that, we're moving on to our next post here, and this one goes to the Kobasai letter. And as you might have seen right there in that statement from the U.S. president, the president does say that all talks with China concerning requested meetings with the United States will be terminated until further notice, until the demands are met by the United States. So that is also another big deal as well. No talks at all. And of course, when the talking stops, that's usually when countries start getting really out of hand and doing stupid things like China invading Taiwan. So this is very, very tricky right here, of course, and it's getting very escalated very quickly. And of course, over the next day or two, we'll know just how bad it's going to get when the U.S. puts these new tariffs on China. But with that, we're now moving on to our next article, and this one goes to OSINT Technical. And I know what you're all thinking right now. Is there any positive news whatsoever about the tariff war situation? And of course, the good news is a little bit scarce. But we do have some good news here on the Russian front of things, that as a result of this chaos, the price of oil is plummeting on fears of a global recession in Russia, and Russia's unsanctioned shadow fleet of tankers face shrinking margins, threatening Russia's economy and war effort. And last week, the capitalization of companies listed on the Moscow exchange fell by 2 trillion rubles. And as you can see right here, crude oil is going through the floor right now. It was like trading somewhere around $70. Now it's trading at $59 as of, I believe, today. So it's dropping quick. And of course, Russia relies on oil exports to basically make up the majority of their economy right now. And without selling that oil through their shadow fleet, Russia is in deep trouble. So right now, they are getting away with selling their oil at very low prices compared to what it was, and they can't afford that right now. And in fact, this situation is so bad, we've actually gotten a statement from the Kremlin today, and this one goes to Polymarket Intel, and the Kremlin made a statement today that they are aware of this very bad crisis that's taking place with the oil prices, and they are closely monitoring the situation, because once again, it is dropping quick. As you can see, here's another chart in white and blue that gives you a better idea of exactly how fast it is dropping, and look at that. That is right there going through the floor. So that is something that Russia does not want to see on a chart, because right now, that could hinder their funding and their war effort quite dramatically, to the point it could be a collapse. So this could be as bad as the Ukraine striking those refineries over and over. This could actually end up being worse than that if it keeps falling through the floor. So that is one shred of silver lining here of the situation, but of course, the good news is a bit scarce right now. But moving into our next post here, this one goes to OSINT Defender. And moving away from our news about the trade war, the tariff war in Taiwan, we do have some more news on a different front right here, and we do see that in a notable development, France and Denmark have signed a strategic partnership agreement that reaffirms French support for Danish territorial integrity, and the agreement comes against the backdrop of the ongoing Danish-American spat involving Greenland, because of course Denmark does control Greenland, and in the release from the French government, Greenland is specifically mentioned as in an apparent openness to increase U.S. involvement in the Danish autonomous territory. However, the excerpt stressed that any such increase must be done through dialogue with the Danish authorities. So this is not to be understated. This is a very big deal actually, because it's basically a defense pact between France and Denmark to protect the territory of Greenland if it is invaded by any foreign powers, including the United States. So a very big deal actually, and it's not really clear exactly what and how far this goes, but it is a strategic partnership between the two, indicating that France is not going to allow Greenland to be taken against Denmark's wishes. So that is also a big thing happening today that's sort of flown under the radar actually today. So that's a pretty big one to watch. But jumping into our next post here, this one goes to Null Reports. And we also got a video off the Ukraine front lines today, switching gears away from that defense pact news. We got some big news off the Ukraine front lines. In fact, a very incredible video today. We actually saw a Russian Su-34 trying to drop a FAB bomb on a Ukrainian position, and then seconds later, a Ukrainian air defense missile was fired at the jet and started chasing it down, and it's not clear whether or not it hit or not. We didn't get to see that on video, but the fact that this missile was chasing the jet down, there's a pretty good chance that it actually struck the jet. So this is quite crazy to see. And also, we're not clear if the Russian Su actually struck the Ukrainian position, by the way. I'm not really sure about that. It looks like it probably missed, at least according to what the Ukrainians are saying. So luckily, the Ukrainians appear to be okay, but they did try to get the jet with a missile. So let's take a look at the video and see what happened. And right there, look at that. There goes the Russian jet. It just dropped a FAB somewhere right there. And like I said, according to the Ukrainians, they quite missed the target a little bit. They weren't quite right on the target. But you're about to see it in a minute.
Hey, look!
Oh, and there it goes. There goes an air defense missile chasing after the Su jet, and there it went right there. Like I said, we're not sure if it hit or not, but that was crazy to see that on camera, by the way. An air defense missile going after the jet right after it came in. So very impressive to see that. And also, the fact it was caught on camera is quite incredible as well. But jumping into our next post here, this one's going to go to open source intel. And let's switch gears to our Middle Eastern news real quick, because we do have big news coming out of the Middle East again today. And we've heard that in this post right here, a Yemeni rebel drone headed toward Israel, and it flew over Jordan Jordan, and Jordan allowed it to fly over its airspace and did not shoot it down, but Israel eventually did. And we're really not sure why Jordan didn't shoot it down. It's not clear if it's an intentional oversight or maybe they just simply missed it and they didn't detect it. It's not really clear, but the drone flew over Jordan, but Israel shot the thing down. So let's take a look here on camera. And there it goes. There goes that Houthi drone right there. It's flying across the sky. And after this video was taken, it was shot down off camera. We didn't get to see the shoot down on camera actually, but we did see the drone flying over. That was apparently taken over Jordan right here, this footage, and we did see that right there. But the Israelis did get it, and it didn't make it to Israeli territory. So very good to hear, of course, they're shooting those things down. But jumping into our next post, this one goes to Nexta. And you might be thinking after seeing that last post, why are the Yemeni rebels able to still shoot drones at Israel anyway? Because I thought the US was striking them quite heavily, and why has that threat not been eliminated right now? So we do have a video today showing the new preparations for a new strike on those rebel positions by US CENTCOM. So let's take a look at the footage and see the aircraft taking off once again to go in and strike the rebels once more. And look at there you have it, a nice fighter jet right here on the deck. I gotta tell you what, fighter jet is my new word, my new favorite word, and there it is going right into Yemen. So look at that go. More fighter jets taking off, and of course, I'm not trying to put a dampener on the situation, but so far the airstrikes have had limited success, according to the officials. So they're continuing these airstrikes, and of course, it is putting pressure on the rebels, which is a good thing, but it's not apparently taking them out all the way. So I think more is gonna be needed, but we are seeing right here the footage of the more jets taking off and conducting even more airstrikes as of today. But with that, it is now time to move on to our last article of the day, and this one goes to Visegrad 24, and we do have some news coming out of China as well. Moving away from our Middle Eastern news and on to China, we've gotten more video of the Chinese 6th generation J-36 fighter landing after a test flight, and this appears to be much more up close than our last footage, so let's take a look at it landing and see if we can notice anything new about this new aircraft. And look at that. There it is. It's landing right over a highway, it appears, and this is very up-close footage compared to what we got the last time. And as you can see, it is a Dorito-shaped craft of some sort, and allegedly it is stealth. But of course, that is a Chinese version of stealth, at least according to the Chinese government, so it's really hard to tell exactly how stealth it is, but there it is up close landing. It is certainly an interesting shape, but we really still don't know much about the capabilities. There you can see it on camera, so not much to see, but there's just more footage showing it in action. But with that, folks, that is actually our last piece of news for the day. So I hope you've enjoyed today's short war video, and of course, before you go, smack the like button and also subscribe to the channel as well for more daily war updates just like this one. And today the news was not super heavy once again, because so far everybody's still focused on the US trade war that's currently going on, and also the stock market situation as well. So that is the main focus of today, but of course we still got big news out of other areas of the world that we covered here in the video. And also be sure to join us tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern on our next nightly war news stream, and we'll let you know if that's actually going to happen or not, because the Enforcer is still trying to recover from his illness, so hopefully he will be better tomorrow. And also, if you want to support the channel financially, you can do so on our Patreon page, and the link is down in the description below for Patreon, where you can go over there and sign up for a monthly membership and support the channel that way, which is a very big help, by the way, and we do appreciate that very much, because the Patreon supporters should also help keep the channel running, and we do appreciate that very much. But with that, folks, we will see you all in the next one, and for now, bye-bye for now.